Hey there, internets. So, another late night video on what would have been a Saturday night, but it's now Sunday morning. I had the day off, so next day, so I can stay up late and do a video. And Trump was turned himself in from the indictment, and I read all 98 pages of the indictment, which was kind of dry. But there's also some other things in there. And so linked in the description below will be, the first thing will be a article or the actual text of the indictment. Encourage you to read it for yourself. You can make of it what you will. With everything else everybody either already knows or thinks they know, or what you may find elsewhere. The next thing that will be linked in the description below, I just found a Wikipedia article that was about the Electoral Count Act, and then I may have one in there before I'm done here that is, or I did have one that was United States presidential election in Hawaii, which is actually part of where some of this comes from. And then lastly, an article from the Post Millennial. So I read all 98 pages of it. 37, I think it is, counts. Page 34. Where am I? Total counts are, come back here, 40 counts spread across across the different individuals, 19 people, with some of them only having 2 or 3 counts. And some of the ones with 2 or 3 counts might actually be more legit. Of course, everybody has the right to be proved innocent until proven guilty. Every last one was charged under RICO, and I don't know how well that will stick. I am not a lawyer. I'm not going to pretend to be a lawyer. But it's somewhere between there's some bad stuff going on there and trying to catch every possible thing, and catching everything, and people are guilty of sin, and some very trumped up things. Pardon the pun. For instance, Jenna Lynn Ellis only has 2 counts against her: the RICO charge and count 2, which is solicitation of a violation of oath of office by a public officer. There's some things about some of them are, there's many of those kinds of counts of that and false statements and writings. I don't know the definition of that. I did not look that up. But a lot of these do seem to be just charging someone for trying to make their case, either that there's a legal theory that somebody could have and it may be a crackpot one, or it could be stuff that is maybe a legit legal theory. Some of the ones they have in here are specific to the alternate electors. Some are for influence, trying to influence a witness, and that's where that actually might have a better chance of sticking. There was a woman named Ruby Freeman. She was an election worker. Apparently there was an attempt to pressure her into testifying a certain way about what was going on in Georgia. There's some other stuff related to trying to copy the information on some of the Dominion voting machines, and that is stuff about things like conspiracy to commit computer trespass, computer invasion of privacy, computer theft. Those are some that may or may not stick. because I don't know whether Misty Hampton, aka Emily Misty Hayes, had the authority to invite anybody to examine those machines. If she did, that's not going to stick. If she did not, it may well stick. But when somebody's going in front, some of the charges are Trump putting out a tweet of watch OAN, or Trump putting out a tweet of watch this thing, or just bombastic statements on Twitter, the app formerly known as X. I don't see how that furthers a RICO charge if it was being put in front of me. Testifying that you say something happened in front of a state senate or state representative committee meeting or hearing that is looking into the allegations. I don't see how that would be solicitation of violation of office by a public officer. Obviously, asking them to conduct certain actions, maybe. I don't see how that would be false statements in writings if you actually believe you are right. So, and of course, as they say, a jury will indict a ham sandwich. So, some of these people may not be found guilty. Depends on who they have for a jury. But for example, you get to Act 56. Making this is false statements in writings. Making at least one of the following false statements and representations to members of the Georgia House of Representatives present at a House Government Affairs Committee meeting. Okay, so this is a Government Affairs Committee meeting. He's making his case. It looked to some people like Georgia election workers were engaging at the State Farm Arena, engaging in untoward activities. I'm not going to say whether they're stealing votes or whatnot, because there's something else interesting that will come up at that. That they got rid of all the reporters, all the observers, anyone that couldn't be trusted, using the excuse of a water main break, cleared out the voting area, and then went about their dirty, crooked business, in quotes. Between 12,000 and 24,000 ballots were illegally counted by Fulton County election workers at State Farm Arena on November 3rd. And then in Michigan, 700,000 more ballots were counted than were sent out to voters. I don't know whether, I have never studied that. I'm just reading the quote here. That Ruby Freeman, Shay Moss, and an unidentified man were quite obviously surreptitiously passing on USB ports as if they were vials of heroin or cocaine at State Farm Arena to be used to infiltrate the crooked Dominion voting machines. That 96,000 mail-in ballots were counted on November 3rd in the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election in Georgia, despite there being no record of those ballots having been returned to a county elections office. Now, maybe I can't see how it's false statements if he thought he had the right information. Not that he did, but if somebody thought they did. That's an act as part of the RICO charges against Rudy Giuliani. Mark Meadows attempted to enter a building and was told you can't come in here. Apparently that's something that was in furtherance of the conspiracy. All this stuff, all these different actions were in furtherance of the conspiracy on that. But that water main break is actually kind of interesting, because the post-millennial call comes up where someone uncovered some old posts by Fannie Willis, the prosecutor. Now, Benny Johnson, who uncovered some of this, these old tweets, Facebook posts, kind of goes after her for being a Democrat. Well, most of your prosecutors are Republicans and Democrats. By itself doesn't say anything. And how partisan they are by itself doesn't say anything. However, her tweet can be. Because on November 4th, shows an old Facebook post where it says, Georgia could determine who is our next president. Remember, this is when it was still showing Georgia as Trump ahead. A team of lawyers needs to watch them count every single vote. They can start in Fulton where we are having water leaks. What ballots are they throwing out? Georgia, let's give an honest accounting, no stunts. This is the woman prosecuting these 19 people. This was her in real time, in the moment when it looked like that Democrats could lose and would lose in that moment, questioning the results. So what I see here is it's okay for us to make our case about voter fraud. Just like Stacey Abrams cannot admit that she lost fair and square in 2018, and Trump can't admit that he lost, quite possibly, just as fair and square. I know a lot of Republicans don't want to hear that. But Stacey Abrams can make her case all day and insist that she lost because of Republicans cheating, but the other side can't. And that's what I'm seeing here. I am seeing a clear double standard. And so Fani Willis, I think, is weaponizing her office to go after people who I think it's questionable whether you can go after them, and you may not make it stick. Some of the security breach to some of the voting machines in Coffee County might be something legit. Trying to influence a witness or intimidate a witness in the case of Ruby Freeman might be legit, but some of the other things I don't think are. Doesn't look like it to me. Especially when your RICO stuff is Trump saying, watch OAN and Newsmax right now, what's going on. Watch these hearings that are going on. That's not furtherance of a conspiracy to me. It doesn't look like it to me. And then you have the, as Democrats call them, fake electors. The electoral, it's probably past time to make some serious adjustments to the Electoral Count Act. The history of it is essentially when they had disputed elections. 2020 was obviously not the first time. 2000 was not the first time. 1960 wasn't the first time. They had disputed elections, and sometimes two different groups saying they were the legitimate electors, going clear back into the 1800s. Especially after Reconstruction, they had multiple times, sometimes multiple states. In school, I heard about Florida. I didn't know about Oregon that year, in the same year, until I was looking into this tonight. That it's not unheard of. And so they have this safe harbor provision of you have to have this done by a certain time. However, you still have legal challenges going on. And so if that had been overturned, for that safe harbor, because you have legal challenges still going on, now you have to have legit electors who reflect who voted. Otherwise, you only have to time it out, and that now the legit electors are going to go forward, even if you know before Congress can count those votes, what to do. So having the alternate slate I question whether that was actually illegal because of that. And there is some precedent for it. Because in 1960, and of course, in the things that led up to the Electoral Vote Act, it actually ends up creating this precedent of how you break the tie if you have two sets of electors. And it starts with the executive of the state saying which one's the legit one. And in the case of Hawaii, the governor of Hawaii ended up sending a letter, from my understanding. It says here in the Wikipedia article, that Governor William F. Quinn, a Republican, certified the Democratic slate of electors on January 4th, 1961 in a letter to Administrator I'm hoping I pronounced this right, Floaty. The state government also rushed a letter to Congress by airmail to indicate the new certification was on its way. Nixon, during the congressional joint session to tabulate the electoral votes on January 6, 1961, Nixon, who presided over the session in his capacity as president of the Senate, presented both the Republican and Democratic electoral certificates to head off the possibility of a floor objection by Democrats, such as Representative Daniel Inhofe. Nixon then requested and received unanimous consent from the joint session for the Democratic certificate to be counted and the Republican certificate to be set aside, though he specified it was being done without intent of establishing a precedent. The 3 votes from Hawaii wouldn't have made a difference. However, this is exactly the process they used. They had 2 sets. One group even met after the safe harbor provision. They had to, and they sent both, and the state changed at the last minute. So the first set was the second that those alternate electors were not fake, in so much as they were not certified by the governor of Georgia or any of the other states. And so that's really, to me, one that doesn't sit well, especially because if from what I can tell, some of the unindicted co-conspirators are some of the people that acted as electors. Some of the people being charged are even being charged for discussing legal theories and strategies as part of the RICO charges. That's literally consulting with your lawyers and acting in furtherance of a conspiracy, saying, what can we do legally? That isn't RICO. So it does look trumped up to me. There may be some things, whether some of those charges would actually fall against Trump, that would stand up, I don't know. The ones that are aimed specifically at Trump are more, though, other than RICO, are a lot of the false statements and writings ones are solicitations. Trump has counts 1, which is the RICO one, 5, which is solicitation of violation of office, 9, which is conspiracy to commit impersonating a public officer, 11, conspiracy to commit forgery in the first degree, which goes along with the electors issue, 13, conspiracy to commit false statements in writings, 15, 17, and 19, which are filing false documents. In fact, one of the charges against him is literally making a court filing with their allegations. Conspiracy 17 is commit forgery in the first degree. 19 is more false statements in writings, and then 27 and 29 and 38 and 39 are filing false documents, solicitation of violation of oath, and then more false statements in writing, another solicitation for violating oath by public officer. And some of these are after the fact, after it was all said and done. Now, when you're basically telling somebody you can't make your case to the court, you can't make your case to a legislative hearing, you can't put out in the public opinion that you think you're being ripped, that's literally telling me that you cannot contest when you think you're being cheated. Whether you are or not is not the point. If you think you are, and Trump's ego does not allow him to be wrong ever, ever. You will not get Trump to admit to being wrong. He will never say, I was wrong. I shouldn't have insulted AC/DC as the greatest band ever and said they weren't the greatest band ever because, his ego wouldn't allow that. They are the greatest band ever, but his ego would not allow it if he had denied that. Because Trump cannot be wrong. He will never admit that. It's one of the reasons I kind of roll my eyes at the calls that he was cheated, because during the 2016 primary, if he lost, obviously his opponent cheated. It didn't matter whether they did or not. The Colorado caucuses, they cheated even though they'd used those rules. All the rules were followed. He insisted up and down that they cheated because he didn't learn how caucuses worked, didn't get his people to the polls, didn't strategize how to win. So he just declared that they cheated. And people just automatically believed it, even though that wasn't the case. And he would swear up and down now, even if you showed him what the rules were, he would insist otherwise, because his ego does not allow for it. So some of this, I think, is really stretching it. Some of it, especially stuff that does not apply to Trump, like some of the computer issues, some of the issues with trying to influence a witness, I don't think that don't apply to Trump. They may be legit charges. I don't know. I think a lot of this has got to come out in trial. So that's what I gathered to it. I do think that there's a lot of trumped, excuse me, the pun again, or the expression, but a lot of this is trumped up. And I think some of it will have to come out in trial. We can all hope. You can hope for whatever you want, one way or the other. But, like a lot of this stuff, sometimes this much might be guilty of, not this much. But until then, like, share, subscribe, share it with your friends. Until then, you all take care.